That the question will be asked, why are we celebrating more debt?
It's really a shame that the international financial community, these debts that we are now going to be incurring to finance our attempts at recovery, are like lending money to a business that suffered losses through some kind of crisis. That is the world that we as Jamaicans, both you on that side and us on this side, have to navigate.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, I want us to look at this video whereby there was a heated moment between the Prime Minister of Jamaica, his wife, and the opposition leader. We are talking about Mark Golding. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I need to talk about one thing here. Am I the only person who feels like, or rather who understands that the opposition, when it comes to political parties, the opposition party is not the enemy of the current party in power? What I understand is that the work of the opposition is to make sure that they hold the party in power accountable for their promises, or should I say fake promises. Now, I feel like, or rather I find it that the opposition really pushes the party in power to do better. It's not a fight, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a fight. Now, I want you to watch these heated moments whereby the opposition leader, Mark Golding, has put the Prime Minister and his wife to their places. Now, remember, if you're watching my video for the first time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also comment. So stay tuned, because I'll be coming with my commentaries at the end of it.
We will approach reconstruction as a growth-inducing strategy. I know from this that the question will be asked, why are we celebrating more debt? We are not celebrating more debt. What we are celebrating is the opportunity to make a massive investment in our infrastructure, in our people, in the services that improve productivity. And it is that investment, Madam Speaker, that will expand our economy relative to our debt. And therefore, in short order, you can look forward to growing, increased revenue, and a relatively smaller debt to the size of your economy. We have never before had an opportunity to spend $6.7 billion relative to our GDP. We have never had that opportunity. US and our GDP is somewhere in the region of about 17 to 18 billion dollars, $19 billion, thereabout. The Minister of Finance reminded me, $20 billion. You are proud, as are we, proud of the fact. Yes, $20 billion. So you get an opportunity to, within 3 years, to deploy $6.7 billion relative to your $20 billion GDP. So you can see the opportunity to expand the economy. And that's what the strategy is. And I'm encouraging all Jamaicans, regardless of political persuasion, to embrace this opportunity, to shift from crisis mode, to move from disputes over the distribution of a care package here or some lumber there, and start to think, how are we going to play our part in the new possibilities provided here for all Jamaicans to benefit? So, the reconstruction effort being deployed, logistics, agriculture, and energy will create thousands of jobs, crowded private investment, sustainability. Because make no mistake, there will be those looking on at our currency and say, can the central bank defend? Do we have reserves? Well, with this, we will be in a superior fiscal position to give confidence and certainty to our business sector. We will turn this moment of crisis into an opportunity to transform. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has never lacked ambition. What we have lacked for decades is the financial wherewithal to match that ambition. Today, that has changed. For the first time in our history, our national development vision is backed by a robust, multi-year, multi-partner financing envelope. Madam Speaker, we now have a clear reconstruction strategy, an empowered institutional framework.
And this year, we got walloped by Melissa. It's really a shame that the international financial community is still approaching the mitigation of the effects of climate-induced disasters on countries like ours by financing packages that are largely based on additional debt. These debts that we are now going to be incurring to finance our attempts at recovery are like lending money to a business that suffered losses through some kind of crisis that is trying to dig itself out of a hole from. Taking on additional debt to do that is going to be a challenging road for any country. Therefore, I don't think it's appropriate to treat these announcements in a triumphant way. We are going to be incurring the costs of paying back this massive additional borrowing in years to come. We are in a country which has spent the last 15 years seeking to get ourselves out of a debt trap, where we've had to run massive primary surpluses every year consistently to reduce our debt to GDP ratio, with a target that's written into our law incidentally by a government from this side, which we were anticipating would have been met this year before Melissa struck us. And now we are facing a new era of massive incremental borrowing. If you look at 3.6 billion US of sovereign debt, that's over 25% of GDP of additional borrowing. That does, and the 662 billion already available, only less than half of that is in a form that's not debt. Most of that is debt as well. This $2.4 billion of private capital, we look forward to seeing whether that will be forthcoming and in what volumes, because you can't project that you're going to receive private investment as part of your recovery. I'm glad that the multilaterals are going to support the effort, but at the end of the day, investors have to be willing and there have to be projects available to them that are bankable and investable. So we will see whether or not that happens. But the reality is that only 12 million US out of $7 billion is grant funding. Only 12 million US out of over 6 billion of program US funding is grant funding. That is the world that we as Jamaicans, both you on that side and us on this side, have to navigate.
Procedo, members' time for speaking has expired. Procedo, the members' time for speaking has expired.
We didn't visit your Prime Minister's speech with the kind of response that you're giving mine.
Madam Speaker, as the time for the opposition leader has expired, we ask that you give him sufficient time to complete his presentation.
House, the question is that the leader of opposition be allowed an additional 5 minutes to complete his presentation. No, members, I am going to ask that no one asks for sufficient time to complete, because those words can mean a 2-hour, 3-hour presentation like the member from St. Andrew South. Yeah, Angela, you know it's you, who spoke for hours. What is your point of order? What's your point of order? You're correct.
That violence is
Member, you're correct. But it is not in keeping with the approach of Parliament to speak until conclusion, whenever that is. And we have learned our lesson, as the member so nicely stood up and reminded us. So she knows who we are speaking of. So 5 minutes, House. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. House Leader?
Yeah, I suppose I should be grateful, though it's a very parsimonious allocation of time to respond to such an important speech on such an important occasion. It's symptomatic of what is wrong with this Parliament, that the Leader of the Opposition is given 5 minutes more to finish a presentation. Anyway, that is the world in which we are being required to live. Madam Speaker, the institution which has been announced to oversee the recovery process, which does not yet exist, it is just an announcement thus far. This National, I think, Resilience and Recovery or Resilience Authority, NARA, is going to, we are told, be responsible for the relief resources being spent in a judicious way, in a way that's efficient, in a way that is accountable and transparent, and in a way that accords with a sensible policy of recovery. After all, the PIOJ has indicated that this financial quarter that we're in now, the economy is going to contract by some 11, I think, to 13% of GDP relative to the same quarter last year. That is a massive contraction. And it's going to further exacerbate the debt to GDP ratio because, of course, the debt to GDP ratio has two components. There's debt and there's GDP. So what we're seeing here is that debt is going to be growing dramatically, and GDP is in the process of a free fall as a result of this terrible calamity that has hit us. So while I admire and indeed share optimism about the future, because Jamaica is such a resilient and special country, and we will get through this, I think we should approach an announcement like this with some sobriety. This event has caused us to retrace our steps substantially from the economic path we were on, and which the nation incurred substantial sacrifices to get to where we were. I'm not blaming the government for Melissa. That would be absurd. I'm not blaming the government for seeking resources to fund the recovery. It's going to be necessary to get those resources. I am just making the point that this is not something to celebrate. This is not something to gloat about. This represents a substantial setback for Jamaica, and it represents if it's not administered properly, it could permanently weaken our future prospects and damage the country's future. Which is all the more reason why the composition of this recovery authority is important. I wrote to the Prime Minister on the day after the hurricane to suggest the establishment of a task force with broad-based representation, leaders from the private sector and business community, leaders from the churches, leaders from the NGOs, and representatives from the government and the opposition. The concept of NARA is consistent with that. However, I've heard nothing from the Prime Minister as to the role of the opposition in NARA. We heard it will be broad-based, but there is no inclusivity in the dialogue around how it is to be constituted. And I can hear from the barbs that are flowing from the other side that the likelihood is that we will not be included in it. That is what I'm hearing from the other side in their responses to me, their sotto voce remarks. All I can say is, Prime Minister, the opposition represents some 400,000 voters who voted for us, 28 constituencies, and our presence in the recovery and our participation in recovery, you'll be well advised to seek in a genuine...
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired.
Thank you. As the member's time for speaking has expired, I ask that you put to the House that he be allowed an additional 2 minutes to complete his presentation.
Brother, always a big theme. Interesting talk, you know?
Complete your presentation, Opposition Leader. Complete your presentation, Opposition Leader.
Another generous allocation of time. Thank you very much.
And Opposition Leader,
yes.
Prime Minister got 10 minutes extra on 12 minutes for statement by Minister.
Right. I won't be nearly as long.
And you got half of that time.
I'm wrapping up.
Yeah.
It's not in my nature to be long-winded. So, Prime Minister, the point I was making is, I think you would be well advised to seek, in an authentic way, the inclusion of the opposition in the governance arrangements over which these funds will be administered on this recovery, because Jamaica is facing an unprecedented disaster, the scale of which is indeed awesome and frightening to those who have to encounter it on a daily basis in several parishes across the land. So, Prime Minister, I wait to hear your thoughts on this. I have asked you about it for a month now. You haven't indicated to me your views, but you know, I'm putting to you today again what I consider to be the optimal approach to dealing with this particular matter. Time is short and I've been asked to finish within 2 minutes, so I will wrap up now. More or none. We will be hearing about the fiscal rules and we'll be hearing about the suspension of the fiscal rules, no doubt. And I'm looking forward to the discussion around that, where I'll have an opportunity to say some more on these matters. Thank you, Madam.
So, thank you, Madam Speaker. You made mention of the human dignity component with your transition to digital cards or an alternative means to food distribution. In your presentation, I note that the purpose of loans, albeit that you are celebrating, and we ought to celebrate restoring the country, the aspect as to whether or not there was any consideration of persons who simply won't be able to access your electronic system to access basic necessities for the food and anything else that comes with it. Mm-hmm. Also, in terms of an allocation, is there a specific sum that goes to the persons who are the primary victims and should be the ultimate beneficiary of any loan given? That is to ensure that the lives of the people are restored in a position better or at a minimum to the position they were before the disaster. And ask lastly that any consideration should consider the Constitution and the guidance on human rights when that is done. Thank you.
The member.
Right. Thank you very much. Prime Minister, in speaking about the next phase, and in particular moving from relief to recovery, I had a question in terms of, I think you had mentioned something about cash transfers earlier. though not specifically in here, but it ties in. So the question I wanted to ask is whether or not in the distribution of cash, allocation of cash transfers, whether gender sensitive targeting will be used, especially given the fact that we know that targeting households that are led female heads, that really brings more fairness. And I was wondering whether or not that was contemplated in what you were planning to do. The other question that I have was really around also integrating emergency cash relief into existing welfare programs. We haven't heard much spoken about that, but I believe that that is important, although issues of connectivity and network would hamper how successful that can be. But as we are moving to restore, I am asking, where are we with that, and hoping that we will do that. Prime Minister, you speak in the reconstruction effort being deployed across infrastructure, housing, digitalization, logistics, agriculture, and energy, that thousands of jobs will be created. Again, Prime Minister, the question I'm asking, I'm looking at how Ministry of Labour and Social Security and some of those who have done the assessment, I'm looking at the cry on the ground about the partisan nature of how it has been done, how some communities have been totally left out, and I'm wondering what will be done differently to ensure that those thousands of jobs that are created for Jamaicans and not on a partisan basis.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, the Amaran Reactions, and I have to appreciate you all for the love and support for watching this video up to this point. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in Jamaica, we have two major political parties. The JLP, led by the current Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, and the PNP, led by none other than Mark Golding. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people feel like the political party in power and the opposition, they are enemies. No, these people are not enemies. The main function of the opposition is that they push the current party in power to do better. They ensure that they hold them accountable for what they promised the citizens of a country during their campaign. Now, when it comes to the issue that involves the PNP and the JLP, the case here is different. Mostly when it comes to JLP. Now, you understand that the Prime Minister has his wife in Parliament who controls everything, the debate and everything. Now, it gets to a point, I read an article whereby, or I also saw that video whereby the Prime Minister's wife did mute the mic of a member of Parliament while she was still speaking and giving out some important notes, some important points. Yeah? Now, you can get to understand this thing how you want, but truth is, the wife was protecting the husband. Yeah? That's why you understand that I have to put somebody in power. I have to put somebody who knows me and somebody who can control us. Yeah? Because, ladies and gentlemen, truth is, when you mute the mic of a member of Parliament, that's completely wrong. This person has valid points, and the points were being directed directly to your husband, who is the Prime Minister, because some areas need answers. Some people need answers, and that's why you see people really love Damian Crawford. I mean, a very great leader, bold, courageous, raw. He says things as they are. Now, I keep on wondering, ladies and gentlemen, why is it that everybody, or rather should I say majority of people, have a problem with the Prime Minister? I mean, something must be wrong. You cannot have a large number of crowds always against you and you live, eat, travel like everything is okay. We have the illicit enrichment, ladies and gentlemen. We have the cases whereby you are asking the residents of Paroti to relocate. I mean, where do you want them to go? We understand that the hurricane hit Jamaica really hard. A lot of lives were lost, properties were damaged, and there is that hurricane relief fund that was donated for Jamaica. Not for the Prime Minister of Jamaica, but for Jamaica. Now, that money was supposed to help the people of Jamaica get back to their feet. That money was supposed to help Jamaica rebuild itself. That money was not meant for the Prime Minister and his friends to enjoy themselves, live a luxurious life, buy luxury cars, luxury homes, and all of that. Yeah? Now, instead of you attending to the people of those affected areas, you are telling them to relocate. And the main reason is that you need your friends, your foreign friends, your Chinese, your white friends. You want the Americans to build a larger hotel, a larger restaurant in that area. Now, you are convinced that the lives of your people matters than the lives of your foreign friends. And that's why you are giving them that land to build, so that when hurricane hits again, they'll be the ones affected. No, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't operate like that. You are keeping the money for yourself. These white friends, your friends to be precise, they'll come, they'll build, they'll give you money. Yeah, you are benefiting from both ends. And the only people on the receiving end of the pain, the agony, it's your people, the people of Jamaica, the people you are asking to relocate. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing is for sure. Something is wrong with the government of Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen the video whereby a white American lady exposed that in Jamaica, the white people have built a big wall that bars the Jamaicans from accessing their very own beaches. And what's the Prime Minister talking about that? We are seeing that the Prime Minister has signed, like, the bully will dump criminals in Jamaica as if there is no, those people, deportees, have already landed in Jamaica. So, is Jamaica under a colonial rule, ladies and gentlemen, or did Jamaica gain its independence? Because to me, this doesn't look like independence. Independence, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't just refer to the country. It's not just a day to celebrate. I mean, what are you celebrating? Or if it's me, what am I celebrating? If I belong to this country, what am I celebrating? If I don't have any freedom of speech, if my leader, my politician, the person I presume to be a leader, is oppressing me, why am I celebrating Independence Day? Why am I doing that? Something is wrong. So, beautiful people of Jamaica, how I'd wish that you stand up for your rights, speak up and take actions. If somebody is not serving you, and one thing is for sure, you are not supposed to serve these people, these politicians. They are supposed to serve you because you elected them for them to work for you, not for you to work for them. Now, what we are seeing right now is that they are robbing you, they are oppressing you, and they assume that you are supposed to be the one working for them. Actually, we are the ones working for them. We go for work to work, we pay our taxes, all of that, and they end up using our taxes in enriching themselves. So, beautiful people, let's speak up against this form of corruption, oppression against our politicians, our dirty politicians. So, once again, beautiful people, I've been your host, the Amaran Reactions. Remember, if you're watching my video for the first time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also comment. To my returning subscribers, my returning viewers, I have to say thank you so much for the love and support. So, until we meet again in my next video, peace out and one love.